authorized by the Federal Communications Commission. Opinions expressed on WRFG do not necessarily represent the opinions of Radio Free Georgia Broadcasting, Inc., its staff, or volunteers. This program contains language and/or information which may be strong for some listeners. Portions of this program are pre-recorded. Discretion is advised.
We're here today to show our respect to our family elders and to celebrate our family's cross to the mainland. But we're also here today to honor the old souls, many who from the very, very beginning of our creation guided our journey from one world to another. We're here today because our parent took we by the hand and teach we to swim the current surrounding these islands. And they teach we to
and recollect how we live in a time before freedom come in the old days. They didn't keep good record of our birth, our death in the selling of the slave back then. A male child might get took from a mother and sold at birth. Then year later, this same person might have to mate with his own mother or sister if they was brought back together again. So it was important for the slave themselves to keep the family toys, just like the African griot, who would hold these records in his head. The old souls in each family could recollect all the birth, death, marriage, and sale. Those 18th century Africans, the watchers, the keepers, the ancestors.
We're poor, Ashe. We're poor to the creative spirit, the great Ashe out of which we all emerge, Ashe. We pour to that creative spirit by whatever name we know it, whatever name you hold in your heart, in your mind, whatever name your ancestors gave, whatever name you learned as a child, whatever name you believe it to be, whatever name you believe it to be in spirit or in science, Ashe. We pour to the first human beings who came into existence on this planet, the first human beings who raised the first structures, who cooked the first meals, who taught the first children, who had the first children, the first Africans, the first people, who stood upright, who walked, who figured out how to stay on this planet, who figured out how to pass that knowledge on to their children and their children's children, the mothers and fathers of civilization, Ashe. We pour the next libation to their grandchildren, their children's children, those who raised the great early civilizations of Kemet and Kush and Monomotapa, the great medieval civilizations of Ghana and Mali and Songhai and Kanem Bornu. We pour to those who the great civilizations of the Igbo people and the Hausa people and the Kikongo people and the Mabara people, the great Mande civilizations, the great Kikongo, the great civilizations of Southern Africa, the Bantu people, the great civilizations of Southeast Africa, the Dinka, the Shilluk, the Noor. We pour to those millions who raised the foundations from which the world would learn what it meant to be human in the world, Ashe. We pour to their children who upon the arrival on the shores of people they had never seen before, found themselves captured and marched overland, found themselves perishing by the millions before they were held on the holding cells and the open air pens on the coast of West, Central, Southern, and East Africa. We pour to the ancestors who did not know as they were stripped of all clothing and sent denuded into boats, packed like animals and strewn their bones across the floor of the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. We pour to them who in the last moment on Africa grabbed the sand and grabbed the dirt and put it in their mouths and understood that the only thing they might have to preserve their place in that continent was their memory of that place and their ability to pass it on to their children. We pour to them, Ashe. We pour to those Africans and their children who finding themselves cast adrift in Santiago, Cuba, who found themselves cast adrift in Porto, Spain, Trinidad, and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, who found themselves cast adrift in New Orleans and Charleston and Mobile, who found themselves cast adrift in Salvador, Bahia, who found themselves cast adrift in Barbados and the archipelago that formed the wayward and the windward coast. We found them in these places learning Portuguese and Spanish and French, whose often first words was, "Oh my God, oh Madre de Dios," who found themselves praying to survive and pass on to their children the memories. We pour to those ancestors who are represented in the thousands buried in all the square miles of where we stand and who sit here buried before us in 400 caskets forged of wood from West Africa with Adinkra symbols. Each one of them, each woman, man, and child, symbolic of millions. The children of those who could not be killed, we pour Ashe. We pour to their children who somehow survived the hells of enslavement and fought for emancipation in the Caribbean, the French, British, Dutch Caribbean, who fought for emancipation in South America, who fought for emancipation in Central America, who fought the struggles we refer to as the Civil War in the United States, who came out of that, marched out of enslavement through Reconstruction, and found themselves making great migrations, eventually ending up in places like New York. Their children's children, who making a way for themselves, became our great-great-grandparents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our parents. Those who, when the first bones were discovered in this space, held their hands and said, "Stop, no more." We are here to speak for those who can no longer speak with their mouths. We pour for those ancestors, some of whom came to Howard University in 2004 and followed these caskets all the way back to New York. The ones whose names we know and the ones whose names we don't. And at this moment, as we pour this libation, I would ask anyone who feels comfortable to say the name of someone in your bloodline who is no longer physically here, but who you know made it possible for you to be here. Go ahead, let's hear the name.
Angel Quinn.
We pour to the names that we hold collectively. Ganga Zumba in Brazil. Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Henri Christophe in Haiti. We pour to the great Avengers, Nanny of the Maroons of Jamaica. We pour to the great ancestors, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass. Say the names that you study. Who are the names of the ancestors that you have come to hold in your heart and your mind as you hope that you can do what they did for us, for your children and children's children? Let's say some of those famous names. Malcolm X, Lou Hamer, John Henry Clark, John G. Jackson, Jacob Carruthers. And finally, two final libations. We pour to those who make it possible for us to do what we do. We pour to these rangers who stand guardian over this sacred space. We pour to these Africans and these folks who have come from Howard University, the staff, the faculty, the administrators who brought us here today to bear witness. This is not a libation, but an affirmation, because their hearts still beat, their tongues still speak, their minds still think, and their minds still wish the best for us. We pour for all of those people who surrounded us on this journey today and made it possible for us to be here. We pour this affirmation of thanks, Ashe.
Ashe.
And finally, we pour to your children's children's children who will one day stand on this space and speak your name. Ashe.
Ashe.
Yes, we do. Need you right now. We need you right now. Hey, say we need you.
Here to you going, neighbors beware. The poverty and death that haunts every day. The boat that leaves to the USA. You're paying for the Africanness you still keep. You're paying, Bookman is not asleep. You gave us Haiti the strength to fight. Black people in the Caribbean, I say unite. Break the chains that keep us apart. Haiti suffers because it made us start. 80-80, you have the will. 80-80, Africa calls you still. Too black, too strong, you'll have to pay. Blacker than night, never seen the day. But too black is always the reason for your pain. But your fight for freedom will not be in vain. Eighty, you're going and no one seem to care. 80 now, but neighbors beware. The blood, sweat and tears that is shed today will be a guide for Africans along the way. Cuba beware. Jamaica beware. Trinidad beware. Grenada beware. Caribbean beware, beware, beware. Care no fear. Care no fear. Caribbean beware, beware, beware. Break the chains that keep us apart. 80 suffers because it made us start. But too black is no reason for pain. The blood for freedom will always stain. Eighty, you have the will. 80, Africa calls you still. Caribbean leaders, what are you going to do? Today it's 80, tomorrow it's you. Today it's 80, tomorrow it's you.
They take off the handcuffs and you in the streets. The American Airlines land every day in Haiti at least 3 times a day. And every day it brings a load. And then they say, oh, there is insecurity in the country. Do you wonder how come? Until 1985, I lived home in a house where I did not have the key to the front door. Even when I went on vacation, I didn't lock the door. I just pulled it. Today, I wouldn't dare. But to solve all of this, first element, we must know what's happening. Because if you don't know, you cannot resolve a problem that you have not identified. Number 2, you must get yourself together. Don't look at Zaid and say, well, here's what's wrong with Zaid. Forget it. Baina has to look at Baina. Look at what's wrong with Baina and decide how to cure and clean Baina. Zaid has to take a good look at Zaid, clean up Zaid, and cure Zaid. And when Baina is clean, Zaid is clean, Baina and Zaid can have a program together.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All humans, Africans maybe more than others, know that we do not live by flesh alone. Yeah, I hear there are people who say they are atheist. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in spirits. Atheists. Thank you. They don't believe in spirits. They don't believe in any force other than man. Possible. But what I know is all Africans, every corner of the continent, all of the people with high melanin content, they all believe in what we don't see, in non-matter existence. So, I cannot speak and not come to the spirituality of things. In Haiti,
That was stated.
a discipline was established.
Remember, because
A set of a belief system was established. Created from Ifa, from the motherland. Our expression of the divine, of the unseen, is called Vodun. Vodun is how we view the universe, how we view the interaction between matter and non-matter. Nothing is free from non-matter, from spirit. In Vodun, each person have their spirit. As a group, we have a spirit, all of us together. As a nation, we have a spirit. The tree has a spirit. The cat has a spirit. And Vodun teaches that if I really want to understand what's going on around me, what's going on in the world where I'm at, I must understand the spirit of things. I cannot just know matter of things. And Vodun gave us a multitude of principles for understanding. As I told you, everything has a... If the black man, there's a spirit of the black man. There's the spirit of the African man. There's the spirit of the white man. Whether he knows it or not, he's got one. Now, when the first black woman was raped by the first white man, and they brought into this world somebody called a mulatto, do you think this person has another spirit? Of course. With every new matter that comes to be, a new spirit comes to be. The television is a machine. The camera is a machine. But the camera has a spirit. And the best cameraman is the one who understands the mechanical workings of this machine and the spirit of this machine. So if we really want to get to work, we not only need to know ourselves, the truth about ourselves in the flesh, we need to know the truth about our own spirit. So we can tell, in fact, if you get into your spirit, how will you be able to kill this white man that's hiding in front of you without killing yourself? He and you are mingled in like this. If you're gonna go get him, there's a large chance that you will kill yourself when you shoot at him, unless you know your spirit. And our people in Haiti have devised a system that allows us to understand the spirit of humans. And this understanding of spirits of humans, if we all knew it and applied it, it will make interaction between us so much easier. My brother Zaid over there, from having observed him a number of years, I know he's an Ogu. There's no doubt about it. My brother Inuni over here is a Legba. Now, if there is a position or there is something going on in this group, we all in the group, if Zaid knows who he is and Inuni knows who he is, they will never contest the same position. By knowing what their vital force, life force is, they know that certain things, they don't need to be there. They know that there is a time for them. They just have to let everybody be who they are and accomplish their mission. I'm going to try to make it a little clearer for you. Everybody here is familiar with Toussaint Louverture? Okay. Toussaint Louverture is a black man who largely contributed to the independence of Haiti, but he did not see independence. Freed himself as a slave. He was a slave for a time, and he was named by the white man François Dominique Breda. François means a thing belonging or having quality of French. Okay, a French thing, French possession, French quality. Dominique means somebody born on a Sunday. Breda is the name of the plantation where he was born. Every slave on that plantation signed Breda. Okay, so his name, François Dominique Breda. As this man started to implicate himself in the struggle for revolution, he got rid of the François. The Dominique fell off almost by itself. And people started calling him, as his godfather used to call him secretly, Toussaint. He was called Toussaint because his godfather, who's a man who came to Haiti as an adult, an African, and as an African, Africans like to name people according to the day you were born. And he's born on November 1st, which is the day of All Saints. So Toussaint means All Saints. Okay? So his godfather secretly always called him that. Later, when he started to affirm himself as a revolutionary, he said to people, hey, don't call me this Francois business. Hey, call me like my godfather calls me, Toussaint. Fine. As he became military implicated, and people start noticing that whenever they are trapped somewhere, and Toussaint is there, he always finds a way to open the way and get out of the trap. So then people start calling him l'ouverture, which means the opener, the one who opens the way. So Toussaint l'ouverture. This man paved the road to independence. But before independence, he was captured by the French, taken to France, locked up in a jail, opened up a hole in the ceiling for snow to come in and eat him away. He died of gangrene. After Toussaint, Jean-Jacques Dessalines took the lead of the movement. And Dessalines took things all the way to the Declaration of Independence, January 1st, 1804. But when you study these two people, when you study them spiritually, Toussaint, not only by his name, both his names, is a Legba. What is a Legba? Legba is the spirit, the opening, the initiator of all things. He opens the way for people. He allows somebody to get to where they ought to be. If you take the Bible, Moses is a Legba. He opens the way for people to get somewhere, but Legba never gets there. Legba must not be attached. Legba is the door. He creates the opening for you. You go in. He stays there to create another opening for somebody else. He doesn't go. Toussaint did not see independence. Toussaint was followed, as I said, by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who is an Ogun. Ogun is the spirit of the one who eliminates obstacles after an objective is set. Be careful. An Ogun is a very wicked thing if there is no objective. You have to have your objective set, and then the role of Ogu is clear, and Ogu will give you a fine job. It will get you to the objective. So, depending on what circumstances we're in and what our objective is, Zaid and Inuni cannot want the same position. Two very different nature, two very different spirit. But when Zaid don't know who he is, and Inuni does not know who he is, what happens? It's easy for them to fight for the same position because they do not know who they are. They are not in touch with their true self. the vital force that makes them be. And that's why it's important for us to get into the spirituality, our own. Voodoo is not, you see, in Africa, I hate to talk about religion. Be careful. Religion is a business in which they sell God. And this business works very well for whoever sets up the shop. Okay? Now, when we're talking about voodoo, we're not talking about a religion. We're talking about understanding your profound nature so you can be and live as who you are. Nobody can come and tell you, well, hey, you want something? I'm gonna see that. Well, give me $5,000, and I'm gonna call God up there and tell him. No. And this is something that sometimes I found so sad, that we have a lot of people who claim to be Hungan and practicing voodoo, and they're doing the same business as the Catholics, and they're trying to turn it into a religion. In fact, something horrible is happening at home right now. A lot of Hungan today are starting to dress in the robes, the big white robe or black robe the priests used to wear, that they're not wearing anymore. Now the Hungans at home are wearing them with a big cross on their stomach. They're giving up the asson, the thing they used to shake. They're now taking the cloche, the bell. Ding, 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 ding. If you go certain ceremonies today, you go to them and you think you're in church. Anyway, today a lot of them start with "Our Father who art in heaven." Yes. And that is sad. That is out of nature, out of themselves. Spirituality, nobody can teach it to you. You need to get the fundamentals of any books, any spiritual system. You can get the fundamentals and then look at inside of you and then determine how you are going to use the fundamental principles to improve your life. But nobody can tell you, you must pray every Friday, you must do this every Saturday, you must do that every Sunday. No, because what is good for you is not necessarily what I need. You may need to go into yourself and meditate 100 times a day. And even the same person will not need it the same way all the time. You, in certain circumstances, you need to be meditating and finding all your forces, gathering all your forces continuously certain days. And then other days you may not even think about it. It doesn't mean you don't pray. Because everything you say, if you're living your own life, if you are who you are, and you know who you are, and you live working towards realizing your mission in life, every sound of it out of your mouth is a prayer. Every gesture you make is a prayer. Every dance you dance is a prayer. And when you make love with somebody, you are praying. If you know who you are, and this person knows who they are. There isn't anything that you do that is not a prayer when you know who you are. When we're looking at life, taking life as if we were, leaves being blown in the wind. You don't put any objective. You don't set no objectives. You just sit there and complain. Here's something else we're very good at. We can complain for days. And when you say to somebody, what's the solution? Okay, let's try. Nothing's going to work. But they keep doing this. They're doing this to us. No, don't complain. I don't believe in complaining. Look at the truth for what it is. Face up to it. Oshun teaches us. Love, you know what love is? Are you sitting well? Because I know you all been looking at all this television and this movie and reading all these fine romance novels Love is knowing your weaknesses, your strength. The weaknesses and strength of your partners, the weaknesses and strength of your enemies. That is love according to Oshun. That is equilibrium. If somebody tells you, oh, I love this brother, look at his little nose. This person don't love you. Person loves your nose, man. You better run. Oh, I love this sister. Her butt is so cute. Man is a butt man. Don't waste your time with him. When there is love, there can never be love when there is no knowledge. Ignorant can't love nothing, not even themselves. Knowledge is the first step to love. I know this brother. I know what he can do. I know his spirit. I love the brother. Yes. And because I love him, he knows me, he loves me, we can make a plan together. I don't have to become your wife. You love me, I love you. There's something we can do together. Maybe it's going to be something in the revolution. Maybe it's going to be something in business. And maybe it's going to be put our two lives together. But that's not the where we're going to do the loving. It doesn't really matter. I love you, you love me. We're going to do something that's going to benefit the whole. That's when I love you. But if I love your nose and you love my butt and her little feet and her little something, please. This is not going to take anybody anywhere. In Verdun, we are taught good is what benefits the collective. The individual exists to contribute to the collective. So when I'm going out, I want to get all the money I can get to get me 2 cars, 5 houses, and jewelry and galore and all of this. And you tell me, I love my people. And I'm going to say, I love my people. My people are starving to death. Any one of my earrings could feed a child for a couple of years. I'm sorry, that's not true. I do not have a good knowledge of who I am. Because if I have a good knowledge of who I am, I will know that this hungry child is me. So this hungry child cannot stay that way when I'm with 10,000 jewelry all over the place. No, I cannot do it. Before I came, I had prepared a text, the text I delivered yesterday. This text, I prepared it, and since I went back home, I have made it a policy that whenever I'm coming out here or out of the country to talk, my text must be approved by peasants in my country. So after preparing my text, I translate it in our own language, and I go to different places in the country, and I deliver it to groups of people who don't know how to read and write. And I have been shocked at the corrections they have brought to my text. One such correction is a definition of the word success. I had wonderful, I don't know what it is, but I had beautiful words to say what success is. And a peasant, about 72 years old, said, success, that's not that. I said, what do you mean? I mean, I went to school. I should know. I read in big dictionaries. I said, that's not success, sister. What you're describing here is applaud for a particular achievement. That is not success. Success is being who you are in such a complete and stable way that you become the foundation upon which the next generation will feel secure.
Yes, sir.
Success is not what you do. Success is who you are. If you live your life as who you are and who you ought to be, nobody needs to know you. Don't matter you don't go on CNN. It doesn't matter if WBI don't know you exist. You are a very successful person. Another brother asked me, do you have any children? I said, yes. How many? 4. And 2 grands. Where are they? I said where they were. He asked me a number of questions. Did they go to school? What did they do? Blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. Any of them got arrested? Any of them doing drugs? Any of them smoking? No. Well, you're a successful woman. Because the ones who came after you, their lives are good. That's what your success is. Makes no difference to me how many cars you got, how many houses you got. That is not success. So we need to look inside and establish for ourselves. Don't take other people's standards. White men say, all those are in. And we all go around walking like this and feeling guilty because our nose breathes real good. You have no problem breathing. That's great. That's what a nose is for. My nose is a problem only if it cannot allow me to do what it is supposed to do. My mouth is a problem if I can't eat, if I can't talk. But the size of it, the shape of it cannot determine. That cannot be a problem for my mouth.
WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 FM, WRFG.org. Blessed Thursday afternoon. We're coming in hot. Part 2 of Mama Baina Bello. Baina Bello speaking of the Haitian Revolution and, of course, much more. Not just a storybook event. This happened, and this happened, and this happened. We need all of that. She's going into the elements of the Haitian Revolution. The revolution that's still causing imperialists all over the world to shake in their boots. It's 404-523-8989. That's the number up here to communicate with I in the studio, 404-523-8989. I want to greet everyone joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, and all those platforms. And definitely, for those of you joining us at WRFG.org. For those of y'all joining us on 89.3 FM, the terrestrial signal on your radio dial. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is some Haitian music. Toto. Bisiante. We're going to take a short break and come forward with Professor Baina Bello as she's teaching hard, elements of success. And the next hour, we got another special treat for you. Stay tuned. We're locked in until the 4 o'clock hour on the Ancestral Rock. Your station for progressive information is WRFG Radio Free Georgia.
The following is a public service announcement from one of WRFG's 501c3 supporters. Georgia State University's Rialto Center for the Arts presents Grammy-nominated saxophonist, composer, and former winner of the Thelonious Monk International Jazz Competition, Joshua Redmond, on Saturday, January 24th at 8 p.m. The Rialto Center is located at 80 Forsyth Street Northwest in the heart of downtown Atlanta. For tickets and more information, the website is rialto.gsu.edu. Once again, that's rialto.gsu.edu.
On Saturday, January 24th, WRFG and the Little 5 Points Business Association will be hosting the Little 5 Listening Booth. Oral history comes alive. We are excited to build on the amazing stories that we recorded last year and hear from many of you who may have interesting tales to share. Anyone with a story about the experiences in the Little 5 can sign up for a 15-minute recorded audio interview at the WRFG studio. Please go to our website, wrfg.org, to sign up and to tell your story. Please be sure to sign up by January 14th, as spaces are limited and may fill up fast.
89.3 FM WRFG, continuing with the voice of Mama Professor Baina Bello on the Haitian Revolution.
Okay. So please, brothers, sisters, go in yourself. I'm sure all of you here have heard enough conferences. You've read enough books. You've seen a lot of things. What you don't have is you have not taken all of this in, kneaded down with your own experience. When it comes out of your mouth, it should not be a quote. Don't go out there and say, oh, Baina Bello said, please. That's not honoring me. I'll be very happy if I hear you say that what comes out of your mouth is not a quote, but a conviction out of your heart through your mouth. An excellent example is Cuba. And that's what most of us don't know how to do. Most of us go into a either or. Well, I'm against the white man. I don't want anything. I'm going to walk bare feet because the white man made the shoes. I'm going to walk naked because the white man made the clothes. I'm going to sit on the floor because the white man made the chairs. Okay. If you want, that's all right. But there's another way. You could learn from the chair he has made and make your own chair that fits your big behind. You can make your own whatever using the technique. The principle is forever. It's universal. It belongs to nobody. This white man that you're busy giving him credit for everything, he went all around and stole from all of us. Most often he's bringing back things he took from you. He brings it back to you and you say, whoo, he's a genius. No. Yeah. You're not gonna say, I'm not going. No, go. Learn. Study. But don't spit it out like a parakeet. No. Take it in. Knead it down. Make a dough with your own experience, with your own reality. And then when you're going to speak about it, you're going to bring out your conviction, your vision, your point of view. According to Dr. So-and-so, please. I know they condition us in the schools because they don't want us to say nothing and say, well, where did you get that information? And they condition you that continuously you got a name. Dr. So-and-so say, Dr. So-and-so say. Dr. So-and-so say a lot of stupid things. Even very brilliant so-and-sos say a lot of stupid things. Because all of us are human. For every portion of intelligent things we say, and we, Baina included. And you would do me a favor and an honor If when you look at what I say, when you read what I write, you say, yeah, I agree with her here. Yeah, that's right. This I feel, that's correct. But this one here, no, they had a sister Tegri. She took off. I don't see it. I don't view it that way. I think this way, there you help me. Don't say every word out of her mouth is God's given truth. That's not true. That doesn't exist, this person. So go in. Take all of this, knead it down, make your own, and bring out your thing. I'm always hoping whenever I come before any group, especially when there are younger people here in the group, that one day I hope to sit in the audience and look at somebody who used to come and listen to me and see how this person brings the information they have gathered from all around, bring it inside themselves, and then spit it out, their own conviction, not quotes. This whole quote business is out. Don't tell me what somebody else said. Tell me what you believe, what you're convinced of. And if you speak what you're convinced of, it will make your action, it will give weight to your actions. You will act on what you say. And it will be your conviction acting. And that will give strength to your actions. And our combined action can be a strike or a movement that brings the result that we want. Thank you for your attention. May the force be with you, your own force.
Thank you very much, sister. Just by way of repeat.
Creation and hope began by those first captured Africans. And Nana, she carried them with her 4 generations of Kazan. And we must carry them with us wherever we go.
In a very few words, if there is one revolution we could say was run by women, it is the Haitian Revolution. When you take into consideration, and this is not an exaggeration, Toussaint Louverture, who's a main person, main initiator of all of this, most French official who wrote about him continuously said he fought like a woman. But of course, he never said why. The reason is very simple. He was taught to fight by women from Dahomey. That's who trained Toussaint on his fighting skills. Jean-Jacques Dessalines was raised by his aunt Toya, an Amazon from Dahomey, who from the time he was a tiny little boy, his aunt continuously told him, you must do for this land what I could not do for Dahomey. So the two main people in the revolution of Haiti, trained by women militarily. Besides this, from Toussaint Louverture himself, letters that he wrote, he said every troop was made of 1/3 women. 1/3 of every troop was 1/3 of every battalion, if we could say, was made of women. And there was a large percentage of children also. And Toussaint Louverture still explained, as they would go into attack, the first people to enter the battlefield had to be the women. Because they were more flexible, they would crawl on the ground through the bushes and come very close to the enemy. And then they would start making this very special noise they know how to make with their mouth that would sort of confuse the enemy camp. And it was also the women's job to go to the enemy and remove the cannon. You know, in those days, the cannon was it was a very important instrument. As long as the enemy had cannon and you didn't have, you cannot approach the enemy. It was the women and children's job to go to the enemy's camp, render the cannon unusable. And I tell you, sometimes a mother would take her child and throw it in the cannon's mouth, or throw herself in the cannon. When you're talking about slaves who would throw themselves inside the cannon's mouth to make it unoperative, these were women doing this. And once one of us would throw ourselves in and make it inoperative, then the French would not bother with it anymore. Then the others would come in and push it out the way and carry it to our camp. That was the women's job. So without any question, the role of women in the Haitian Revolution is not measurable. Besides, this is a general. We have women like Marie-Jeanne, who was in charge of security. Who gave Jean-Jacques Dessalines security? Marie-Jeanne and her band. She had a troop of female only. And Dessalines said himself, I never feel as secure as when Marie-Jeanne herself is assuring my security. Marie-Jeanne. Women officers in the army, Lieutenant Pierrette Jolibois, Lieutenant Sani Belair, Captain Guillaume Charlot, lots of women. So there was that whole period, revolutionary period, up until Dessalines' death, even into Christophe's rule, women run all kinds of things. The first woman minister of treasure, the first person minister of treasure in Haiti, in free Haiti, was a woman, Afemi Dagui. The minister for finance was a woman. The Dessalines government had a lot of women, and Christophe's government had women. It's after Christophe, with the first mulatto who became president, Pétion, that things turn around. He passed a decree saying that it is forbidden to ask of women, to give to women tasks that make too much demand on their mental and physical capacities. So therefore, from this point on, women are not allowed in a public function, okay? So there's no question about the role of women in Haiti's war. And if I go even further back, with the Arawaks, the first people on the island, there were 5 rulers at the time of the arrival of the criminals from Europe, and 1 woman among them, Anakauna. Of the 5 rulers, she's the one who lasted longer, who fought them longer, and they were unable to capture her militarily. And that's why Ovando wrote to Spain and said, he has tried everything militarily to capture this woman, impossible. He must be allowed to use ruse. And that's how they pretended they wanted a peace treaty. And then in the peace treaty, when she went for the peace treaty and they grabbed her, set fire, and that's, peace treaties we know all about. We should know all about them by now. Okay? So there is no doubt about the Haitian. But besides Haiti, we need to know all of our history. We are not, I don't know about you, but me, yes, I live in Haiti. I was born in Haiti. Haiti is my country. I have a Haitian passport. But when I'm in Nigeria, I'm Nigerian. When I'm in New York, I'm a Black American. When I'm in Jamaica, I'm Jamaican. The earth is mine. That's my land. And I must know my history wherever, in every corner where I am. It's important for us to know when we're talking about women in history, we must know about the 3 mamas in St. Thomas, who in the 17th century liberated the islands militarily from the Dutch. And the island stayed free for more than 9 years. They run the island before British, Dutch, and German put together to put these women down. We must know these things. We must know. Women liberation didn't start in 1960 when we started burning bras. Makeda in Ethiopia, in Saba, she was a woman ruler who came after 3,000 years of uninterrupted rule by women. In her country, they could not imagine that a man could rule a country because they felt, first of all, they hadn't seen it. They've always known a woman ruling the country. And second, they felt with the natural talents of women for details, men did not have what it takes to run a country. That's why it was the business of woman. Yes, it's very, logical that the way they viewed these things. Now, so we have, if we take Naomi with a female army and a male army, the male army is in the business of protecting the king and the nation and making expansion. The male army's job was the day-to-day policing of the population and fighting defense. Each had their own role. But in all of our societies, all over Africa, there has never been this concept that women can't and women don't, or women are less than. No, we are different. We have to know our own forces. Why two armies? Very simple. Women don't have their strength same places or in the same way as men. Men will be stronger, easily develop strength from the upper body. Women, their strength is more easily developed from the lower body. So, if I become a policewoman in today's police force, they're gonna teach me to fight like a man. I'm never gonna be equal to any man on that police force. I cannot be. Because the force they're asking me, the part that they're asking me to put into play are not the ones that are natural to me as a woman. I can be equal or better to any man when I know how to fight as women do, naturally. Not learning to fight as a man. It's like you ask a dog to be like a cat. Okay? So that's why it is, we've always seen in African traditional societies, women are equal to men, but each have their own role. They have their times where they must be separate. The women must get together to get certain things done. The men get together to get other things done. And then there are specific places where we're going to come together to do a specific thing. Okay? But it doesn't mean separate. But the white men usually say, you see, yeah, women one side, men the other. Oh, that's racism. No, they have another word for it. Sexism. Thank you. Please, let's not get into this kind of crap. Question.
What is the Black community doing? Can you give us an update?
I'm sorry. Brother Mooney asked me to show you. We have 2 pamphlets in the back. 2 different, two lectures that I've given. This is the most recent, the one I gave yesterday, the one that I was aided by farmers in my country to write. And they are available in the back, $5 each.
Can you give us an update on the struggle in Haiti and
Haiti, thank you.
Sorry. And give us an update on what is the Black community doing, applying pressure for Francois to go back to face child in need.
Oh, there is no such thing as far as I know. No. There is nobody really working at Haiti in this. people have seen, first of all, people are extremely disappointed back home. Extremely disappointed, kept hungry, very hungry. When you're hungry, you can't think right. There are a lot of things that you cannot do. Without jobs, stress. Even your sister right here came in as a ball of nerves. Was not very certain that she would make it to the plane a couple of days ago. So, you're seeing a refreshed Baina. If you'd seen me Thursday night, you probably wouldn't recognize me. So, but there isn't much of a thing. There's a lot of talk. But listen, it is very difficult when a few things that we lived very recently. When the US went in, they claimed this whole occupation was to stop the coup, arrest the people who are doing this, and bring justice and all this other crap. Okay, they've gone in, stop the coup. Okay, let's say yes, it stopped. Who did they arrest? Which big leader? Did they arrest Cedras? No, gave him $80 million to go enjoy himself away from the country. Panama or something like that. Michel Francois, living well, someplace, Colombia or wherever. B&B, same thing. Constant, proofs about the killing that this man has done, even on television. There is you almost don't need a court to judge the man. You know what happened to him, right? So why is somebody's going to be interested in putting pressure on the American government to bring Michel Francois to justice? All the documents that they that they found from the FRAP office. FRAP was the official force
recognition of the uncelebrated efforts of people like Marcus Garvey. But Marcus Garvey aside, it is Williams from Trinidad whose activities spawned modern-day Pan-Africanism. And we remember that Williams in the year 1900 organized a meeting in London. And that meeting held in London and organized by that great man was the beginning of the efforts towards bringing Africans, irrespective of where they were geographically resident, to talk about Africa. The 1900 meeting was followed by yet another meeting in 1919. And that meeting was organized by yet another great African and great Pan-Africanist, W.B. Du Bois. And Du Bois was telling his audience at that time that our kith and kin in the continent have been enslaved. Our kith and kin have been colonized. And if we do not support them, they'll not regain their independence. The 1919 meeting was followed once again by the 1921 meeting and 1923 meetings, both held in London. And ultimately in 1927, there was a meeting in New York. But the most critical meeting for Pan-Africanism, at least the one that we can relate to in the continent of Africa, was in 1945 that was held in Manchester in the United Kingdom. Why I think that that was very significant, because Africans were represented there. Kwame Nkrumah represented Ghana at that meeting. Peter Abrahams was present from South Africa. Hastings Ngwazi Kamuzubanda was present from Malawi. Jomo Kenyatta was present from Kenya. Obafemi Awolowo was present from Nigeria. And there were representation from Jamaica and from Trinidad and from the United States of America. The 1945 meeting was critical because at that time, all African countries were under the tutelage of colonization, except for Ethiopia and Liberia. Liberia having been established as a settlement for freed slaves in 1847, and Ethiopia, of course, through the exploits of Emperor Menelik, had defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa and were never, therefore, successfully colonized. After 1945, the struggle for independence was moving in earnest. And I think that the World War had helped in this regard. The freedom of India in 1947 had also helped in making colonization as a form of control to be one that was not very attractive to the colonizing powers. Which brings me to the question of how Africa was then divided. Africa, as we know, was divided in Berlin in 1884, and it was divided at that time amongst the European powers, chiefly the United Kingdom, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and of course, the Belgians, through the activities of Leopold, sometimes referred to as Leopold of the Congo, had also succeeded. Of course, there were also other areas. The Arabs were present as colonizers in Zanzibar, the Omani Arabs. And we know that that particular exercise of the partition of Africa was deliberately designed to ensure that African countries were easy to manipulate. But as I've said, by 1945, the United Nations organizations having been established in San Francisco in the United States, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights also having been endorsed in Paris, France in 1948, had recognized that colonization was dehumanizing. So that on the 6th day of March, 1957, when Ghana regained our independence, Kwame Nkrumah was very clear. And I think Kwame Nkrumah is not credited as much as he should be in this struggle for Pan-Africanism. If you listen to Kwame's statement or his speech on the day of the independence, he was as clear as he was passionate that the independence of Ghana meant nothing if the rest of Africa was not free. And he started in earnest to energize other African leaders. You remember that it is at that time that the French Fourth Republic was also being introduced with the return of Charles de Gaulle into power. And at that time, what majorly happened for the benefit of Africa was the decision of Guinea through Ahmed Sékou Touré to vote no, so that they could gain their independence. And by 1958, we now had Ghana, and Ghana representing the former British colonies as having regained their independence, and of course, Guinea-Conakry representing the former French colonies having regained their independence. And it is significant at that time that Kwame Nkrumah remains very faithful to his agenda, because in 1958 in Accra, Ghana, he calls a meeting, the All-African People's Meeting. And what he is telling the leaders at that time, at the leaders of the countries which were independent at that time, and in that meeting, the countries represented were Ghana, Guinea, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. And he was telling his stalwarts at that time, if we are going to conquer the colonialists, we must be united and we must move as one united front. And it is instructive that although Ghana was independent, in 1959, Kwame Nkrumah convinces Ahmed Sékou Touré and William Tubman of Liberia to sign a treaty in Sanquil in Liberia to think about Africa as a united front. There are a series of meetings at that time. The first meeting that we see at that time is in 1960. In 1960, we see the meeting that is held, I think 1960 and 1961, a meeting is held in Casablanca in Morocco. And the meeting in Casablanca in Morocco is one that once again is attended by true Pan-Africanists. It must always be remembered that even as early as those days, the colonial powers were very clear in their agenda, which sometimes was subtle, sometimes was not very subtle, particularly the French. The French had succeeded in recruiting the leaders of the so-called independent in Francophone Africa, people like Félix Houphouët-Boigny, people like Sylvanus Olympio in Togo, and others. And these were essentially fifth columnists whose agenda was to torpedo the entire process of the fight against colonization. So that when the meeting is held in Casablanca in Morocco at that time, and even before we go to Casablanca in Morocco, in 1960, there is another meeting in Accra, Ghana. And at that meeting, we begin to see people beginning to gain interest in the struggle for independence. And I go back to 1960 because Frantz Fanon is representing Algeria at that time, even before the Algerians have regained their independence. And this is going to be significant because the struggle for decolonization becomes the rallying point in the struggle to unite the African peoples. But we are talking about Casablanca, but the colonialists have succeeded in persuading some Africans that you don't need unity. What you need is nationalism, so that we have two groups in 1961. The Casablanca group, which comprises Algeria, Egypt, Guinea, and Libya. And then, of course, we have sometimes what is referred to as the Monrovia or the Brazzaville group. The Monrovia group is led by people like William Tubman, is led by people like the leaders from Nigeria, and you have a number of people who think and are telling Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame, we know you are talking about unity, but we hold the view that Africa cannot be united in the manner that you desire. We are going to retain our nationalism, but we are going to cooperate. But Nkrumah is telling them this is not the route to take. Ultimately, both the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group meet in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in 1963. And that is when the Organization of African Unity is founded. So that indeed it is the Monrovia-Brazzaville group that wins, and Kwame Nkrumah and the Casablanca group loses out. But I want us to listen to the speech of Kwame Nkrumah on the 23rd day of May in 1963 in Addis Ababa. He was as passionate as he was eloquent. He told his audience, and allow me to paraphrase, if we do not come out of this meeting with a united African government, with one army, with one currency, with one capital, I am telling you that the erstwhile colonizer is going to ensure that we are divided. Those of you who are present here are going to get used to your national flags, to your national anthems, to your national mottos. Those of you who are going to be appointed as ministers are going to enjoy the perks that come with your office. Those of you who are here as heads of states and government, you are going to get used to 21 gun salutes, and it's not going to be easy to unite Africa. If only they had listened to the Osagifo on that day, Africa would have been totally different. But lo and behold, we ended up with a weak Organization of African Unity, whose history we know and whose history we'll discuss on another day. But suffice it to say that after the 1963 meeting, there was yet another meeting in Cairo in 1964. And when we are holding the Cairo meeting in 1964, once again, it is the Monrovia-Brazzaville group that is winning. The question at that time, what do we do with the inherited colonial boundaries? There are those who argued at that time that if we move in the direction of changing these boundaries, it will create conflict. At that time, there was already a boundary conflict between Ethiopia and Somalia. And ultimately, in Cairo, we came up with what is the Organization of Africa's doctrine on the inviolability of the independence boundaries. And it was agreed that the independence boundaries would not be disturbed. And ultimately, of course, we know what that has brought about in terms of undermining African unity. It is also instructive that at that time, there are those who took the view that there was something that was beginning to emerge. The emergence of the Soviet Union after the World War II, and the emergence of the United States of America, and therefore a bipolar world, so that the world is forced to look either east nor west. And that is why Kwame Nkrumah says we should neither look east nor west, we should look forward. And you will appreciate that it is then that he writes his book, in 1963, Africa Must Unite. And he enters into an arrangement with Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea, Modibo Keïta of Mali, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, Habib Bourguiba of Tunisia, and Julius Kambarage Nyerere, and they are working jointly with Jawaharlal Nehru in India, and they come up with the idea of the non-aligned movement, the movement that is non-aligned and positively neutral. We are neither going to look east nor west. A lot of activities are taking place, and Africa is getting undermined. At that time, in 1963, there are 32 independent African countries. What then begins to happen after 1965? 1965 is a marker year because in 1965, Kwame Nkrumah convenes a meeting in Accra, Ghana. And the meeting had two agenda items. Agenda item number one, that we must leave Accra with a united government. Having failed in 1963, we must leave with a united government. Agenda item number two, that we must not forget that there are some African countries which are still under the colonial yoke. And it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we begin to move in the direction of guaranteeing their independence. But unfortunately, once again, Kwame Nkrumah did not carry the day. And what ended up happening is that the African Liberation Movement is what was established. And ultimately, the Organization of African Unity did accept to form the African Liberation Committee, which was to be headquartered in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. But it is critical at that time that the colonialists have started to invade Africa in a very subtle way. The French are active, the British are active, the Portuguese have yet to yield their colonies in Africa, namely Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. They are still under the Portuguese tutelage. Equatorial Guinea has also not been freed from the yoke of the Spaniards. Africa is in a very dangerous state. And yet again, it is the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah, whose name I shall pronounce and state ad nauseum today, because actually he is the high priest of Pan-Africanism. The Osagie writes a book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Capitalism. Once again, he is warning the people that we cannot afford the luxury of resting on our laurels. And you know, what is sad at that time, through the activities of the colonial powers, is that the era of assassinations and coup d'etats begin in Africa. It begins as early as 1960. Silvanus Olympio is assassinated in 1960, barely a few months after becoming the head of state of Togo. And it's instructive that Silvanus Olympio actually escaped to the embassy of the United States of America, and is instructive that in fact, and is debated, that it is the French and the Americans who engineered his death. I know the late President Gnassingbé Eyadema claimed that he's the one who shot him, but who urged him to shoot Olympio? We have started a totally different phase. Olympio is dead in 1960, and we now have Lumumba in 1961. Once again, Joseph Kasavubu has been recruited by the Belgians. Mobutu Sese Seko has been recruited by the Belgians. And Patrice Lumumba is assassinated at the behest of these powers, courtesy of Moise Tshombe. And Congo has never known peace. They are destabilizing these countries to ensure that Africans are not united. And after 1961, in 1966, Kwame Nkrumah himself is overthrown. And after Kwame is removed from power, the Pan-Africanism debate now begins to take the back burner. I'm not, of course, unaware that people like Julius Kambarage Nyerere are still alive and well. But the truth is that with the death of Kwame Nkrumah, Africa is destabilized. We see now the frequency of coups, and some African commentators are now beginning to say that coups were as frequent as breakfast in Africa. Because immediately after Kwame is overthrown, in neighborhood in Nigeria, we see the departure of Nnamdi Azikiwe and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. And after that, a series of coups in that part of the world. In Algeria, Ahmed Ben Bella is also overthrown. In Mali, Modibo Keita is also overthrown. In Guinea-Bissau, of course, not in the 60s, but later in the 70s, in Guinea-Bissau, Amilcar Cabral is also overthrown. And you can begin to see that the only people who are spared the coup d'etats are the recruits. Recruits such as Felix Houphouët-Boigny of Cote d'Ivoire. Recruits such as Daouda Kairaba Jawara of Guinea. And others who are wishy-washy. People like Leopold Sédar Senghor, although he leads the Negritude movement, but is as much a Francophile as he pretends to be an African. So that there is a sense in which when you go into the entire Sahelian region, whether you are in Mauritania, we see a coup d'etat and the emergence of Mokhtar Ould-Daddah, and you go down there and you see the departure of people like David Dacko in Central Africa and the emergence of Jean Bedel Bokassa, and you go into different countries, you see changes have taken place, and all these are designed to undermine Africa. Meanwhile, the question that then arises is that Africa is divided into these new worlds. You will remember I talked about the bipolar world, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. They themselves are engaged in recruitment. And I think this is very critical so that we are better able to appreciate why the Pan-African movement is now undermined. We now have those who are aligned to the East and those who are aligned to the West, and Africa becomes a theater of conflict. And we have recruits such as Mobutu Sese Seko doing all manner of evil in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but you cannot remove them because the United States of America ensures that they are there. People like Jean Bedel Bokassa are cannibals, but you can't remove them. And even in the North, and sometimes I hear this debate whether our Arab friends are also candidates for Pan-Africanism. Permit me to remind my audience and you, kith and kin and brethren, that in the early days of the struggle, beyond being a Pan-Arabist, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt was a great Pan-Africanist. Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria was a great Pan-Africanist. Habib Bourguiba of Tunisia was equally a great Pan-Africanist. And it is instructive that much later in the year 2000, the real successor in terms of enthusiasm and passion for Africa was to be Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya in 2002, when he signed the agreement for the formation of the AU in Sirte and ultimately its adoption in Johannesburg in South Africa. In a nutshell, what one is saying and why this history is important, it helps us to understand why the enterprise was torpedoed by the machinations of the Western powers who do not want to see Africa united. But allow me to backpedal a little. As we are talking about the African liberation movement and Pan-Africanism, we must also remember that many African countries were still not free from the colonial yoke. And that is why, in addition to the African liberation movement that was established in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania in 1975, for the purpose only of focusing on the countries that were not independent in the Southern African countries, the frontline states was created and adopted by the OAU in 1975 with Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere as the chair. And the agenda of the frontline states, and which comprised Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Angola, Zambia, those states were mandated with the task of ensuring that Mozambique was free, Rhodesia then, which is Zimbabwe, was free. Namibia was free. Angola was free. And South Africa to be liberated from the apartheid regime. And it is critical to appreciate that it is the Pan-Africanist spirit that informed the formation of the frontline state. The apartheid regime was raiding these countries every so often. We remember at one time an armored column nearly reached Angola, Luanda in Angola. But ultimately, through the efforts of the frontline state, which was chaired, as I've said, by Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere between 1975 and 1985, when Kenneth David Kaunda of Zambia now took over. These were sacrificial. And they were designed to ensure that once we are all free, we can now unite and begin to look at the agenda of Pan-Africanism in the manner that was conceived in the 1960s, and if you go a little further, even in the 1900s. What then happened with the frontline state? Because I think this is very critical, because a lot of energy was being consumed by the countries which were still under the colonial yoke. In Angola, we see that even as we have parties that are fighting, there are some parties which are not Pan-Africanist. FNLA of Holden Roberto, UNITA of Jonas Malheiro Savimbi, and of course, we have Agostino Neto's MPLA. It succeeds because it is supported and it is assumed that Neto is going to join in the Pan-African agenda. Equally, when the Pan-Africanists are supporting ZANU-PF at that time, or the ZANU-PF and ZAPU at that time, it is assumed that after Robert Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo regain power from the Smith administration, they will strengthen the African movement. And equally, when we see in Mozambique, after the death of Eduardo Mondlane and the emergence of Samora Moises Machel, we are convinced that these are people who are going to be the engines of the struggle for independence. And of course, we also know that at that time, Sam Nujoma in Namibia is also ensuring that we are moving in that direction. So that in 1994, when Nelson Mandela becomes the president of South Africa and the apartheid regime has been decimated, we now know that indeed the Pan-Africanist movement, and when Mandela
89.3 FM WRFG Atlanta. We're tuned in with Professor Baba P.L.O. Lumumba, giving us a reminder about Pan-Africanism, you know, the protracted journey, just like Mama Baina Bello was telling us, a little different than the average time we hear the narrative about the Haitian Revolution. Why is this? Because ultimately, as she said herself, it's not about quoting her. And Dr. Bello said, and Lumumba says, and Malcolm X said, and Marcus Garvey said, as a master teacher that she is, she stated clearly that her goal is to be able to seat in the audience where people that she once taught were giving their own lectures. So that means deeply inside that the goal is for one to know oneself for oneself, to see, as they say, the universe in yourself and not looking for yourself in the universe, so to speak, looking at an illusion. See, as Dr. Charles Finch shared in a very clear way, the universe in a grain of sand. Self-existing reality. Looking at the elements of a thing instead of just the highlights. Because it's very important to understand the nature of things if we're going to be things or beings who are moving through nature. That's what allows us to build and to grow. Stay tuned to yourself.
The following is a public service announcement from one of WRFG's 501c3 supporters. Artist Charmaine Minifield presents her most recent Praise House installation at Southview Cemetery in South Atlanta, on view through March 29, 2026. Community programming includes open hours every Sunday from 12 to 5 and oral history recordings. The project honors Southview's restoration efforts. More information at praisehouseproject.org.
Yes, we give thanks for the works of Mama Charmaine. Years, Charmaine Minifield on the battlefield, reminding us again, same thing, can't make it up, it's all in alignment, reminding us of ourselves and what are the building blocks of who we are. You know, what and who and what are the building blocks of who we are. We need to know this so that we nurture that which holds us up. Simba Simbi, hold up that which holds you up. Family, we're going to continue with PLO Lumumba for the rest of the program, and we look forward to seeing you this time next strong by the grace, by the will and the grace of the Almighty. Stay tuned to yourself.
Attend the Organization of African meeting in June in Tunis, Tunisia, and sits. Africa celebrates. It celebrates because there are now 53 independent African countries. No African country is under the colonial yoke. Of course, you now know that we are 54 countries, with South Sudan having broken away in the year 2011. But at that time, we celebrated because apartheid was over. And this, once again, brings me to the entire question of Pan-Africanism. It is something that is alive today as it was alive in the early days. Because I've mentioned South Africa a little bit, I want us to backpedal to the year 1906, just to inform us, particularly the younger Africans, that the idea of Pan-Africanism was an old one. You know, as I said a little earlier, in 1900, Williams from Trinidad was calling a meeting in London, and we had the meetings in Manchester, and we had all these meetings of the Pan-African movement. You remember in 1945, we talked about the Manchester meeting, the Pan-African meeting. In 1974, we had a Pan-African meeting in Dar es Salaam. In 1994, we had a Pan-African meeting in Kampala, Uganda. And in the year 2014, we had a Pan-African meeting in Johannesburg, South Africa. Where does that spirit come from? It came, as I've already said, in the 1900s, but I wanted to speak about an event in 1906. This was a speech that was delivered on the 5th day of April, 1906, in Columbia, University of Columbia, by a great South African to whom South Africans don't give much credit, Pixley Kaisaka Seme. In that speech, which I commend to everybody, entitled The Regeneration of Africa, Pixley Kaisaka Seme looks at Africa and he says, among other things, that I look to the day when I go through the Sahara and I cast my eyes beyond Sahara and I go down into the Congo and I look at the lush equatorial of Congo and I go beyond that and look to King Chief Kamar of the Botswana, and I go beyond that and I go to Angola and I go down to South Africa, that I look forward to the day when Africa will be regenerated. Pixley Kaisaka Seme is clear about the Pan-African agenda. So today, when we talk about Pan-Africanism against the history that one can only do justice to a certain extent, given the constraints of time, we find ourselves at a time when we have gone through those phases. Africa has seen independence. Africa has seen post-independence. Africa has seen coup d'etats. Africa has seen guerrilla movements. Africa has seen civil wars. Africa has seen genocides in Rwanda. Africa has seen ethnic wars. Africa has seen religious wars. But amidst all these, there is a single spirit that remains alive and well. And that spirit is that we must be united. And that is why to talk about Pan-Africanism in its latter-day understanding, when the Organization of African Unity, heads of states and government gathered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to celebrate 50 years after the formation of the OAU in 1963, South Africa's Nkosazana Zuma, who was then the chair, wrote an imaginary letter to Kwame Nkrumah. I will paraphrase the letter because she was saying, in effect, Mrs. Zuma, he was telling the Osagyefo, how had we listened to you, Africa would be different. How had we listened to you, we would now be united, and we would not be at the dinner table of the Americans, of the Europeans, of the Italian stock, or the English stock, or the French stock, or the German stock. We would not be at the dinner table being humiliated by the Chinese. Zuma wrote that imaginary letter and said, but all is not lost. I can look forward to the day when Africa will have regained our luster, when the Democratic Republic of Congo will be the engine of Africa, when there'll be a railway line from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Dakar in Senegal, when there'll be a railway line from Cape Town in South Africa to Cairo in Egypt. Zuma writes that imaginary letter to Kwame Nkrumah. And I want to believe that that is the basis of Africa Agenda 2063. Because Africa Agenda 2063 is actually a rehash of what Kwame Nkrumah was saying in the 1960s. So that today, when we talk about Agenda 2063, we must see it in the context of the lost opportunity and the desire of Africa that by 2063, we will be united, but I hope that it will be sooner rather than later. That is how I understand the Africa Continental Free Trade Area signed in Kigali, Rwanda in the year 2018, which tells us that we must now unite. That is how I understand the Yamoussoukro Agreement, which say that the African skies must be open. That is how I understand the Maputo Protocol. That is how I understand all these protocols. That is how I even understood that earlier, the Lagos Plan of Action of 1980 of ensuring that Africa grows as one unit. Today, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we must remind ourselves that Pan-Africanism is about uniting us. We must tell ourselves whether we are Africans in the mother continent or we are Africans in the United States of America, or we are Africans in the Caribbean, whether you are in Jamaica or Barbados or Barbuda or in Brazil or in Europe, Africans in the diaspora. We are saying that the time is now when Africa must begin to rethink. We are telling ourselves that the parties that invoked the name of Pan-Africanism must now revive. Every political party in Africa must now ask the question, when will we dissolve all these boundaries? When will it be possible in the spirit of Pan-Africanism that I can move without let and hindrance from Johannesburg in South Africa through to Namibia and from Namibia through to Lesotho, and from Lesotho through to Eswatini, and from Eswatini through to Mozambique, and from Mozambique through to Zimbabwe, and from Zimbabwe through to Angola, and from Angola to Equatorial Guinea, and from Equatorial Guinea I can move to Malawi and Zambia and have a detour of the Comoros, and from Comoros to Madagascar and to the Seychelles. And as I come up, I'm able to move into Tanzania and to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I don't stop there. I move to Uganda, and I move to Rwanda and to Burundi and to Nairobi. Move to Eritrea and to Somalia, and I don't stop there. I go to Djibouti, and from there I move to South Sudan and to Sudan, and I don't stop there. I go to Egypt, and I go to Tunisia, and I don't stop there. And I come down into Algeria, and I don't stop there. And I go to Morocco, and I don't stop there. And I go to Gambia, and I don't stop there. And I go to Senegal, and I go to Mauritania, and I go to Niger, and I go to Nigeria, and I go to Burkina Faso, and I don't stop there. I come to Central African Republic, I come to Cameroon, I come to Ambazonia, to Togo, Benin, to Liberia, and to Sierra Leone, and Guinea-Bissau, and to Liberia, so that I don't need a passport to move in that way. Today, Africa has currencies, none of which is called a hard currency. We are here during the corona, and some of us are now trying to hoard dollars, because our countries mean nothing outside of our boundaries. I look forward to the day, because that is what Pan-Africanism is all about. I look forward to the day when there is only one currency, and that currency, whether you call it Afro or you call it any other name, it is a currency that we can use. I look forward to the day when the South Africans will not be threatened by the Nigerians or the Ghanaians threatened by the Nigerians. I look forward to the day when I can set shop in Cape Town and nothing happens. And that is how I understand latter-day Pan-Africans such as Thomas Isidore Sankara. Thomas Isidore Sankara took power in 1985, 1983, and within 5 years, he had come up and was speaking a different language. Sometimes when we talk about Thomas Sankara, we think he was the age mate of Kwame Nkrumah. He lived in our lifetime, but he used the opportunity of energizing the process of Pan-Africanism. That is why I understand latter-day Pan-Africanists, such as my good friend Julius Silo Malema, who on a daily basis are telling Africans that our only salvation lies in our unity, are reminding us that we cannot survive the onslaught of the Chinese if we are disunited. We cannot realize our potential if we are disunited. I hold the view that Pan-Africanism is our avenue to success.